did both those things easily here, so you could skip that step. I recommend not doing that, because as you go down here, especially if you're kind of used to using Unix, you can say, well, he's never going to know whether we're going to test this or not, and you'll be surprised, essentially, when I start grading some of these things. Little signs get left behind in many cases here, so if someone's saying, we can just skip those two things, generally you want to beat them over the head and not do that, because you might wind up losing some points. So I'm telling you out loud here, this is one of the things I probably can't check here if you did want to do that, but I recommend that you try it and see what happens. So it'll take you 30 seconds or so to make that work. All right, so one of the things that you'll discover along the way here is that this will tell you what's recommended, but it isn't actually going to install it here. Right? So there's some other little packages that it can bring in, not critical for it to work, but life is better if those things come in. So we can tell it to aptitude install and pick the things that it's suggesting that you put in along with the other ones. Now there's also a way to do this. I think I do this in my script, but I don't quite remember here. We can also say aptitude -r install, whatever. The -r says, look up the recommended packages and go ahead and install all those guys too. So that way you don't have to type an extra term. So up here, if we had just put in a -r, then that stuff would have been unnecessary. But again, I wanted to show you how it works and give you an idea of how the packages help you out and tell you what's going on. Okay. All right. So again, for required packages, if it needs them, then it'll tell you that it's installing them, but it won't give you a broken system and put the thing you wanted without putting in the other required things. The required ones come in if you're going to do that. Now, there are options you can give to aptitude to break your system if you wanted to. I can't imagine why someone would want to do that, but it is possible to have it not do the right thing. But by default, things will work out quite well. All right, so I recommend always not using this apt-to-get thing here, but using aptitude, because if you bring in this one package here, which you needed another one, aptitude keeps track in the database of exactly who needed each of these packages. And then if you remove the one and only package that needed this guy, then aptitude will get rid of that extra package that's now superfluous, that nobody needs. Whereas things like apt-get wouldn't know that it's now a useless package. All right, so very often when you're Googling around about how to do something or other, they'll say, type this line or whatever, and you cut and paste that line. It's likely to have an apt-to-get in it. It really is worth the time to replace that with the word aptitude. Okay, that'll give you a much cleaner database. All right, similarly, apt-get doesn't give you as many hints as aptitude might. If you misspell something by a character or whatever, say, I can't find any package with that name, but maybe you meant this, etc. Whereas apt-get just says, well, can't do it. And you can do a few things like this. You could say aptitude Y postfix. And that'll tell you why you might want to install postfix, or why not do postfix. It might say, hey, this conflicts with sendmail, so if you put this in, we got to take out something else. Right? So there's lots of nice little features to aptitude that we won't use very much, but keep that in the back of your brain when you're trying to configure your system. Often that is a very nice options to consider. Okay. Now, so those are some reasons why you don't want to just do the point and click stuff there, bring up a GUI interface and click on it. We tried it once, but generally we don't want to do that, and we've seen some of the reasons why. You have a lot more control if you're using the command line here. But the main thing is we're going to do hundreds of packages. If you got into that GUI, you'd be clicking 100 different times. It'd be very easy to miss something that I wanted you to do, and it's just a pain. Right? Whereas we can just automate the whole script by having a list of aptitude install this, aptitude install that, etc., right on down the road. And it does all of that stuff for us. And we also have a record of what we have done. If you're using the GUI interface and you want to know, hey, did I install a package? Well, you got to pull up the GUI interface again and see whether it said it was installed or uninstalled. Whereas if you have stuff in a script, you can just grep through that script and you'll find out what you've already put in. Okay. So I've got a little script here which has a whole bunch of aptitude install commands in here, which I've pared down seriously for our lab here because we don't need to watch, DVD movies and things like that, or burn, JPEG or MPEG files and things like that, and edit video and so on. Right, so I've just given you mostly important packages that we can use in the lab. All right, so we're going to do that in Lab 2 or Lab 3, I forget which, but we're not going to do it right now, but we wanted to see a little bit about how you do the installs here and how you make some changes. All right, so next up we're going to look at how we keep this system secure, and each one of you needs to have your own personal account. And again, by Thursday I'll be set up to do that, so I'll be handing out accounts on Thursday, and that'll give you a username on Rohan and a password on Rohan, and then I'll be giving you a username on the Legolas machine, and that'll typically be your last name, or, well, first 8 characters of your last name, unless I have 2 people with the same last name, and then I'm going to have to change them a little bit for that. And it'll have the exact same password on the Legolas machine. And then you're going to put that same name, your last name basically, on your new machine that you have here. Right? So none of this MASC stuff for Legolas or the machine that you're being administered. You can have nice, normal human names and make it much easier to figure out who's who. All right. So VIPW is what we're going to use. It runs VI on the Etsy password file, but it does it in a very safe way. Okay? So this makes sure it creates a little lock file when you try to start this up. And if that lock file is already there, that means some other administrator is already working on the password file, and we don't want 2 people editing the same file at the same time, or the last one who does the write wins, and the person before that who had done the right just gets all this stuff obliterated. So that's one of the things that it can do. And it also has various sanity checks. Right? If you have a line without the correct number of fields in it and so on, the IPW will tell you about the problems that you're having and give you a chance to fix it. Right? 'Cause we screw up the password file, you're at the point where you can't log in anymore. All right. So we really do want to use a nice utility for editing the password file. And again, there are GUI interfaces for doing some of this stuff. They don't have quite the flexibility as if we just edit an actual text file. That's a normal human-readable file here and easy to work with. But it's one of the reasons why you need to know how to use VI, especially if you're going to be a Unix system administrator, because that's the interface you've got with VIPW. So I don't think there's like an Emacs PW or a Pico PW or whatever on the system. They use the standard thing for this, which is VI. Now you've got a few hints of how VI works and so on. Plus, as we go through the labs and me talking about some of these things to do here, and help you get to where you can really do things quite fast on there, because that's a way to get a job, is to be really efficient at making changes and making editing things. People will notice that and you'll move up the ladder. So it's one of the things you want to do, and absolutely essential if you're administering a Unix system. All right. Okay, so if you do VIPW here, you can see what it looks like, and for that matter, you can do a head on Etsy password on Rohan, for example, and see what that file looks like. You don't really want to cat it because it's, I don't know, 10,000 lines long or something like that. There's an awful lot of usernames on Rohan. Ours isn't going to be anywhere near that long. Okay. All right, so we get into it, you get out of it without making any changes. This is an important thing to remember in VI, especially if you've screwed something up and can't figure out how to fix it. :Q with an exclamation point out of it quits. And it quits even if you've made changes without writing back the changes. Normally, if you do a :Q and you have unsaved changes, it tells you, I'm not letting you out yet, you haven't saved these changes. You can tell it, let me out, damn it, and then it will. Okay. So you really don't want to do something like Pico etc password or VI etc password. We have all sorts of race conditions, and we don't have the safety checks and so on. All right. Now, if we are going to make changes to this file here, and again, we can get to where nobody can log in because we screwed up the password file, right? So we don't want to just make some changes and hope it all works. Right? We want to always keep a root session open and available, and in another little window, test whether things are working for us, and if they don't work, well, I've still got this root window open, and I can go back and fix things. All right, so one thing you might want to do is make a copy of that password and put it in /temp or something like that, or in safer places, one of your home directories. /temp really is temporary. Every time you reboot the machine, whatever was in temp gets cleared out. Now, it's a useful thing to have like on Rohan because you have quotas on your home directories and on your mail drop and whatever. You have a really big quota in /temp. So if you need to manipulate a really big file, you just can't even store it in your home directory. Well, it's a super big file. But you can store it in temp. But it just doesn't stay there forever. You can't use temporary storage as permanent storage. Once every 24 hours or so, those things get cleared out of temp. All right, so now if we did get into trouble here, we don't really have to go back to step 1 here. The typical thing would be to boot from the DVD-ROM, mount your root partition, which we'll try later on, and then go in and try to fix, mount etc password, etc. Okay, we sort of did that earlier on, right? We looked at the /mnt/etc/password on that, right? We could do a similar thing here as long as you've mounted it read right. Right, so back in step 20, we did something kind of like that. All right, so let's try to get into our system here. Assuming that the SSH client was set up, you can SSH to Bilbo, Frodo, or whatever it is here, but just say localhost, and again, as we explained before, that means this particular machine. Right, and it should say, Bilbo login, essentially, and you put in your name, the loser name, and it'll ask for a password. You put in the password, and that gets you on. Right, so that would work. Right, so that's how we can test without losing our other shells. Right, so in the root shell, we're going to cd under etc ssh, and then I've got a whole bunch of, read beyond the pages here of what we're actually going to do. I've written a few cryptic things here, and then there's a page or so of explanation about what's actually happening as we do this. Okay, so we're going to go into SSH, and we're going to take the original file here, sshd-config, and give it a nice safe name for right now. Now, later on in Lab 2, I think, we're going to use the revision control system here and save multiple copies in a much less clunky way than what we're doing here. So I can have like 8 different versions of the file, and it's all kept nice and neat for us with little log messages about what each version means and so on. But it's too much to introduce all in Lab 1 here. So we're putting that off, and we'll do a few things in a rather clunky way for right now. So make an original version of that so that even if we mangle this super badly, you can always just put back the old one and be back where you started from at least, rather than having a broken SSH daemon system. And if we did completely break it, we could of course uninstall SSHD and reinstall it again to get that file back. But this is a little bit faster way to get there. All right, so we're going to make a copy of that, and now we're going to do a diff here. Right? Most of the shells have lots of nice shortcuts that you can use. This says go to the last, the caret sign here, if you start with a caret sign, which says go to your last command, look for this pattern, CP, which it's going to find right there, and replace it with diff. So the third thing that's going to happen is going to be a diff of that file with that file. And since they're the same file, we just copied it, then all we're going to get is, a prompt back, right? Because there were no changes. Okay? So you type that, it tells you what it's about to do then, okay? And then gives you a prompt back. And you get no changes coming back. And then we're going to do VI into that file. Okay? We're VIing the original SSHD config file here. And normally that would put you on line 1 of the file. You could say VI +7, and that would put you on line 7 of the file. But you can also give it a pattern. We're saying go to the line where you look for something that begins with, caret sign here means match beginning of a line, P means match a capital P, E means match E, etc. It'll take you to the line, the first line it finds that begins with the word permit. So it'll get you exactly the right place to do an editing. 2 or 3 characters after that, you've got things edited. You can exit VI, save your changes. Bang VI will repeat the last command that began with VI, which was this diff command. Right now it'll tell you the differences, and you should see some changes this time around. In particular, the diff is going to tell us that what used to be line 28 and 29 was the old 28. So what used to be 28 in the orig file is now lines 28 and 29, and here's how they differ. The one on the left is going to have these 2 lines in it. The one on the right is going to have that one. Okay. So what we've actually done here is taken this line that had been there, permit root login without password, and we've just put a pound sign in front of it. And then we want to have another line here, so that reminds us of what the default was, and create another one where we actually change it and put a yes. Pound sign here means ignore this line. Right? That's a comment line. But we put in the original phrasing that we had, and then we put in our new stuff here. All right, so that's we got about 15 minutes left. We're going to do our little show and tell here. I'll grab the new group 5 that we have here, and I've got a list of people that I definitely want to see so I can figure out what group you're going to be in here. So we'll pick up next time with how to do this.